What is my car accident case worth? That is a great question. I get it every day. And the truth is, it really just depends. You might be searching the internet for something like a settlement calculator or how much is my case worth. But in reality, there's no such thing as a settlement calculator. There are so many different factors, and this video might be the second best thing. I'm going to break down tons of different factors that will help determine what your case is worth and what all is factored into it. For the most part, your injury case is made up of two different claims. First, you got your property damage claim. So say you're in a car accident and your car needs fixed. That's your property damage claim. Second claim is your personal injury claim or your bodily injury claim. That's the one we're going to be focusing on in this video. And overall, the purpose of the law is to put the person back in the position that he or she was in right before the accident. So if you broke your leg because of a car accident, the overall goal is to put you in the position that you were in before the car accident without a broken leg. So what do you do to unbreak a leg? You can't actually go back in time. You can have surgery, you can get treatment, but in reality, you can't ever get back to what you really were before. And so that's where the next best thing is money. And that's how you really determine how much is a case worth. The pain and suffering, the injuries that you've had to go through, the lost time at work. And we'll break down all those factors in this video. Overall, your injury case is made up of three different things. First, your medical bills. Second, your lost wages. And third, your pain and suffering. The first thing that your medical bills really depends on is the type of your injury. Say if you were to get in a car accident and break your leg or tear your rotator cuff, then you might need surgery. And obviously a surgery is more expensive than going to the chiropractor for a little bit. And so really your injuries determine what type of treatment that you'll need. Say if you have surgery, then you're going to have to have PT, physical therapy, and you might have to have another surgery in the future. But there are two main reasons I tell my clients to go to the doctor. First, obviously, it's to get better. The main purpose of going to the doctor is to get better. And that's what everyone's goal is when going to the doctor. The second reason is to document your injuries. Because if you go to an adjuster or opposing counsel or a jury and say, I tore my rotator cuff, but I didn't get any treatment, they're going to say, well, let me see the medical bills. There's no medical bills. There's no medical records. They're not going to believe you. So that's the second reason to go get medical treatment, is to document your injuries. Some of the things that adjusters love to see and what they look for and hope for in injury cases are a few different things. First, delays in treatment. They love to see that you got in a car accident and you didn't go to the doctor for weeks on end. So if you go by ambulance or go to an emergency room or urgent care shortly after the accident within 24 hours, that can help your case as well. The other thing is, even if you didn't go to the doctor within 24 hours, still going to the doctor as soon as possible will help bolster your side of the case. Because like I said, going to the doctor documents your injuries. So if you go to the doctor shortly after the accident, it's going to be harder for the other side to say you weren't injured. I've had some clients that wait 1 month, 2 months, even 3, 4, 5 months to go get treatment. And all that time between, so many things can happen. Sometimes they do happen to where an adjuster will say, or the opposing counsel, or even jury, I don't know if I believe that this accident or this slip and fall, whatever it is, caused this injury. So it's more difficult to associate the incident with the injury. So that's why it's so important to go get medical treatment as soon as possible. The second thing that insurance companies and adjusters love is gaps in treatment. Now, you might have gone to the doctor within 24 hours after the accident, but if you don't go to any other doctor for 2 months, even 1 month, the adjuster and the jury and even the opposing counsel will argue, and they might believe the other side is going to argue that you weren't really injured. If you were really injured, you wouldn't have waited 1 month to go to the doctor again. And so that also causes great difficulties in your case and can decrease the value of your settlement. Another thing the adjusters love is seeing that you did not follow the doctor's directions or instructions. If they say, I need to see you 3 times a week for the next 4 months, go 3 times a week for the next 4 months. If they say, I need you to go get an MRI at this place, go get an MRI. If you don't follow the doctor's instructions and directions, then the insurance adjuster opposing counsel and a jury, they might believe that, well, that might have been the cause of why your injuries are so severe is because you didn't go get your treatment. Now, under the law in most states, you have the duty to mitigate your damages. And what that means is do what you can to make your damages as less as possible. And so not following the doctor's instructions and not getting treatment, you could have recovered from your injuries, but you didn't get the treatment you needed. You didn't mitigate your damages. So that's an argument that the other side will use. Another thing that I often see is not getting treatment for all the different body parts that are injured. So say you tore your rotator cuff and you go to the doctor for that, but you also injured your back and you might have had a herniated disc, but you only tell the doctor that you hurt your shoulder. You don't mention your back, but you also don't get any treatment other than treating your shoulder, because that's what hurts the most. Even if something doesn't hurt as bad as another body part, you still need to tell the doctor, you still need to get treatment, because later on you might not be able to claim that you're injured in this accident for that other body part. So you need to tell your doctor everything that's injured, and make sure that you get treatment for every single body part that you believe is injured. Now, going on your medical bills, you should be able to recover everything that is up to the amount of your medical bills, because that's one of the things that you have to incur because of the accident. Now, there are some laws in different states that you can only admit into evidence at a trial what has been paid or is owed, not what was incurred. So what that means in simpler language is if you have a health insurance, Blue Cross Blue Shield, or any other provider, and your medical bill was $100,000 and they paid $40,000 and you paid $5,000 and the hospital wrote off the rest of the bill, $55,000, you can only admit that $45,000 that you actually paid or the insurance, health insurance paid. You cannot admit what was actually incurred. Now, it's up for debate whether you should be able to admit what's actually incurred or what's actually paid or owed, but that's how it is in quite a few states, and that's how it is in Oklahoma. Now, we've been, for the most part, talking about past medical bills, but there's another type of medical bill that you might not be thinking of, and that's future medical bills. Your injuries might be so severe that you need continued future treatment, and that is a little more difficult to quantify, and that's where you might have to hire an expert. There are some experts that will testify that you will need this type of treatment and this type of care. You can also hire a life care planner for the rest of your life or for 10 years, or you have a 60 or 70% likelihood that you will need another surgery in 10 years. But to be able to admit this into evidence, you really need a doctor to testify to this. For example, I have a case where my client was injured. He hurt his hip, his lower back, his shoulder, and his leg. And the doctor said that there's not really much else that we can do for you except give you some steroid shots every once in a while, probably every year, for the rest of your life. And so far, he had $30,000 in medical bills, and he had projected, based on the average lifespan of a male and his age, he had about 28 years left to live. And so 28 times $1,000 a year is $28,000. We were able to have that doctor testify that he would need $28,000 in medical treatment for the future. So, although future medical bills can be more difficult to quantify, it's still possible with the right people. The next thing that makes up your case value is your lost wages. Now, this has a lot to do with your past because you cannot be too speculative on what you could have gotten or what you could have made based on a bunch of different factors. And so based on your previous history, that's what really will depend on your lost wages. But what is your lost wages? It's your missed time from work because of your pain from this, because of your limitations now that you cannot do certain things, because of going to the doctor, maybe some headaches. Those are the lost wages that you can recover in this personal injury lawsuit. So we'll start with past lost wages. That is a little bit easier to quantify, especially if you're hourly. If you're hourly, you can have your employer sign something that says you missed August 1st, August 2nd, August 3rd, list the days that you missed, list the hours that you missed, and have them sign something, that document saying that you missed those days and those hours. That's probably the easiest way to get compensated for your lost wages. Now, if you're self-employed, that gets a little more difficult. That can be more difficult to prove because it could be speculative, but you're not making a certain dollar amount every hour. For example, I've had clients who have been artists, clients who have been electricians, clients have been general contractors. It's a little more difficult to prove lost wages in that situation, but we've been able to manage that. The most important thing is getting your tax records. Now, sometimes this can be a little more difficult because when you're self-employed, you try to write off so many different things, but that's the best way to recover lost wages if you're self-employed. I had an artist as a contractor, and honestly, it was pretty difficult to show his lost wages, but we were offered $2,000 to start out, and we turned that into $25,000 with past sales that he had made. It's not always easy, but it's a hurdle that you will have to overcome in that situation. Also, if you've enjoyed this, you might benefit from reading my document that talks about the biggest mistakes that you can make that will minimize your case value. Click the link in my bio and fill out the form to get that document so you don't make those mistakes and that you can maximize your case value. All right, the third and final major thing that makes up your case value is your pain and suffering. And that is the most difficult question when I get asked, what is that worth? Because it really totally depends. This takes us back to the injuries because if you stubbed your toe, your pain and suffering is not going to be as bad as if someone broke a femur. That's completely different. And so it brings us back to the injuries, what your injuries were. Again, the purpose of the law is to put you in a position that you were in before the accident. Obviously, that's not necessarily possible because we cannot go back in time. But the next best thing to be able to compensate someone for the pain and suffering that they've been through that they would not have otherwise had to go through is through money. And so that's why I get asked, what is my pain and suffering worth? The biggest factor is the seriousness of your injuries. Like I said, stubbed toe versus a broken femur. It can really depend on what type of injury that you have, how long it'll last, and what's going to happen from here, if there needs to be future pain and suffering or if it's just past pain and suffering, if it's mental or physical. And that's some of the factors. Some of the factors is physical pain and suffering. You actually have mental pain and suffering as well. How it affects you mentally. I've had clients who have had a traumatic brain injury and they cannot remember things as well as they used to. They can't focus as well. They have anxiety, they have depression, and the list goes on. So it really depends on what type of injury that you have and how that can be treated. A TBI really can't be treated too well. And so that makes it difficult to actually recover and get in the position you were in before the accident. Another factor is your age. If you lost a leg and you were 5 years old, that's going to be worth a lot more than if you were 95 years old and lost a leg. The reason is because the 5-year-old has the rest of his life, 90 years difference to live without his leg. So it matters on your age because it depends on how long you'll actually have to endure this inability, this not having a leg, the pain and suffering. Another factor that goes into this is your physical condition immediately before the slip and fall, the car accident, whatever it be. Because if you already had slip discs or bulging discs, herniated discs in your back, and it just herniated more, so it hurts a little bit more, then your case is not worth as much as someone who slipped or had a car accident and did not have those back issues before. Because like I said, the purpose of the law is to put you in the position that you were in before the accident. We're not going to blame someone for these injuries that you already had. Another factor is the nature and extent to your injuries. That kind of goes back to stubbed toe versus broken femur to losing a leg. Another factor is whether they are permanent or not. For example, losing a leg, that's permanent. A traumatic brain injury, that is permanent. Stubbing your toe, not too permanent. Now, there are a bunch of injuries that could be permanent or could be not permanent. So that's the importance of hiring an attorney and even maybe an expert witness to testify to those things. Another factor is your physical impairment. So the things that you can't do. For example, if I lost my leg, I'm using these extreme examples because they're easier for someone to understand. But if I lost my leg, there's obviously a lot more things that I cannot do. And the last thing is disfigurement. This can be a big one, like losing your leg, that's obviously disfigured. But one that you might not think of is, say, a dog bite, and now you have a scar on your face that you can't get rid of. That's also disfigurement, because how are we going to put someone back in the position that they were in before the accident? Can we take away the scar? If we can't, then we need to compensate them for that injury. So you might be asking, well, how much is my pain and suffering worth? It really depends on your injuries and your situation. These are just a few factors that pain and suffering depend on. So the best way to figure out what your case value is worth is to talk to a lawyer who handles those type of cases. Now, there are some other factors that determine overall what your case is worth. I'm going to share a few of those right now. One of them is, are there any punitive factors? This can be anywhere from texting and driving on your phone, looking at it, scrolling through TikTok while you're driving. This could be drinking and driving. You went to a bar and now you ran into someone and killed them because you're drinking and driving. That can be punitive damages as well. In that situation, you could actually go after the driver and possibly whoever was serving the alcohol, but that's a whole nother video. Another thing that is really important on your case value is the jurisdiction. And what I mean by that is, where will you have to file the case? Is it in California, where the verdicts are usually higher, and so the case values are higher? Or is it somewhere pretty conservative, blue-collar workers, say, for example, in Oklahoma, where I am? Those case values are not as high as somewhere like California, because whenever attorneys take cases to trial, those verdicts are usually higher in California as opposed to Oklahoma. And so insurance companies and lawyers have to take that into consideration when determining what a case is worth and what you should settle for. Another factor that could play into how much your case is worth is what laws apply, because there's different states that have different laws on certain situations. For example, in one state, if you're 50% or more at fault, you do not get a dime. But in some states, you can be 80% at fault and still get some compensation. So that really depends on where you are at and what laws there are in that state. Another thing that matters is liability, or was the situation your fault? And in that case, the other side might be disputing liability. And what that means is they're saying that, well, it's actually your fault, and so you're the cause of the accident, you're the cause of your slip and fall. Or they could be saying, you were really 30% at fault, and so we're not going to pay you the full $100,000 that we think the case is worth, but we're only going to pay you 70% because you're 30% at fault. Another thing that you might not be thinking about that really could determine your case value as well is what insurance is available. It is very difficult to pursue an individual unless they are very wealthy and they're solvent, because they can usually get rid of a personal injury judgment against them in bankruptcy, meaning if you got a $5 million verdict against someone for a personal injury, you might not ever be able to recover that. So it really also depends on how much insurance is available. For example, I had a case where someone was hit on the side of the road on the highway, and all the money that there was $50,000. That's all the money that there was on insurance. We could not get any more than that. And so it's a tough position. Do you take the $50,000 or do you pursue the person individually? Like I said, it's very difficult to pursue someone individually because of the risk of bankruptcy. The final thing that could make or break your case, or really increase or decrease your case value, is who your lawyer is. Now, you really need to focus on this, because you do not need to hire a family lawyer for your personal injury case or a estate planning lawyer for your personal injury case, because just like doctors, lawyers specialize in certain areas of the law. And so you're not going to go to a brain surgeon for your root canal. That just wouldn't make sense. They might be able to do it, but probably not as good as someone who only does root canals. So making sure that the lawyer that you hire handles the type of case that you need them for. For example, if you're in a car accident, you would need a personal injury lawyer. If you needed a trust or a will, you would go to an estate planning lawyer. I'm a personal injury lawyer. I would not do your will or your trust, or I would not do your family divorce case. I'm not doing it because I don't know all the ins and outs of those types of cases. I stick to personal injury, and that's what I know, and that's what I focus on. Once you find a personal injury lawyer for your case, it's also important to make sure that they have a good reputation. And what I mean by that is they are willing to file the case. It takes more work, but they're willing to file the case. They're willing to litigate it, go through discovery, take depositions, but also that they're willing to go to trial and try the case to a jury. insurance companies keep track of these lawyers because they know that they're willing to do what it takes to take it to the end. And that will maximize your case value because the insurance companies know that this lawyer is serious, he knows how to try a case, and he's willing to try a case. Some personal injury lawyers will just take the case. If they can't get it resolved before filing a lawsuit, they'll dump it. Or they might start litigating the case in the lawsuit, and if they can't get it worked out, they'll drop it. And you do not want that type of lawyer. So overall, there are three main things that your case value is made up of. First, your medical bills. Second, lost wages. And third, pain and suffering. Now, if you ask me, how much is my case worth just from a 5-minute conversation, I could give you a ballpark of possibilities, but it's like going to the casino and putting it all on red. I don't know what's going to happen, what factors there are that could play a role in it. So it really depends on so many factors besides those three things. So the best way to find out what your case is worth is to work with a lawyer who has experience in your area of the law that you need them in. For example, personal injury lawyer, and experience in that area that they practice in. So I'm in Oklahoma. You would hire a personal injury attorney in Oklahoma who knows the laws in that state and can help maximize your case value. Now, in this video, I broke down the three main things that make up your case value. And if you're wondering what other factors, I break down 83 factors in this video right here.